Just a reminder to our Speculating Wildly About Crime listeners, this is for entertainment purposes only and solely the thoughts and opinions of our team. We do invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hi, you guys, and welcome to another episode of Speculating Wildly About Crime. I'm your host, Missy, and today is a crazy case. We're talking about Henry McCabe, a 32-year-old man from Minnesota. This was a harder case to find information on. There are a lot of conflicting pieces of information here, a lot of this person said this and this person said that kind of thing. Now, luckily, we do have the very basics of the case, and we do have some theories and speculations that we will get to a little bit later on today. I want to start with just who Henry was. Henry was 32. He lived in Mounds View, Minnesota with his wife, Corrine, and they had two daughters. One was 10 and one was 1. Henry was a Liberian immigrant and worked as an auditor for the Minnesota Department of Revenue. Everyone had wonderful things to say about him, very involved in his church, great dad, all of those things. On September 6th, 2015, Henry's wife, Corrine, and their two daughters were out of town. They were in California, and Henry decided it was a Labor Day weekend. It was a Sunday, and they were going to go out and have fun. I believe they probably had that Monday off. So Henry spends the day at a barbecue with another friend of his. This friend's name was actually William Pompous Kennedy. And then they decide they're going to go out clubbing. And they want to have some fun and do some dancing and do some drinking and all of those things. Now, at some point in the evening, the fun becomes a little too much fun, maybe we'll say, just because Henry is very obviously intoxicated, according to his friends. His friend, William Kennedy, decides to take his keys, and his other friend, Kelvin Johnson, he takes Henry's wallet. They're trying to prevent him from leaving. They're trying to prevent him from buying any other drinks. That's how the night's going. The club that they end up spending their evening at is a place called Poblinski's. It's known by other names throughout the years, but we're just going to call it that. Anyway, at some point, Kelvin says that he sees Henry leaving with William Kennedy, and it's about 1:40 in the morning. William is driving Henry, and his house is about 2 miles or so from this club that they're at. But Henry insists, instead of going home, he wants to go to this gas station that's in Fridley, Minnesota. And this gas station is actually miles away in the opposite direction of where Henry's house is. And he is insisting that he wants to get dropped off at this gas station. Now, I'm sad Jamie's not here because I know what Jamie would say, and I'm going to say it for her because she's not here tonight. Who the fuck drops their friend off at 2 o'clock in the morning when you know that your friend is so intoxicated that you're taking his wallet or his car keys or both, and then also giving him a ride? It doesn't seem very much of a friend to me, but we do discover that he's more of an acquaintance. So what the relationship really was, we don't know. And at the same time, we don't know what it was like in that car. And sometimes when your friend is drunk and you're maybe just really annoyed with them, you're like, fine, you know what? I'm dropping you off at this gas station, whatever. Find your own way home. Unfortunately, Henry does not find his way home. He's dropped off at this gas station. Like I said, we do know for sure it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. At 2:28 a.m., his wife, Corrine, who is in California, receives this strange phone call. It's Henry. He sounds distressed. She thinks she hears him say that he's been shot, but that's not ever proven. All we do know is from this point right now, this is what she is saying. Now, after this, she's concerned. So she wants to call his brother. His name is Tim Borbor. Hopefully I didn't say that too bad, but she calls his brother and it's like a three-way call. So she's on the line still, is what I'm understanding. The brother doesn't pick up the phone, and this message is left on his voicemail. this voicemail for several years was only released in little clips. So like ABC News or whoever was playing it only had this little snippet. It was about 15 seconds long. Now, some wonderful Redditor actually did a FOIA, got the full thing, and then another Redditor came in and cleaned up the audio. And we have that for you here today on this podcast. Now, I'm going to play this audio in the 2-minute entirety. And I have to say, it is very disturbing. So I want to put that trigger warning just so you know if audio makes you really uncomfortable, you can fast forward. It's very disturbing, but I think it is relevant to the case. I want you guys to pay attention and see what you think you hear. Okay. So we're going to do that right now. Again, little trigger warning. Okay. I know that was a lot. The amount of times I had to listen to that in the last couple of days. I want to get any initial thoughts, comments, anything that you guys might have off of.
You said that this message is from the brother's phone based off of a three-way call from Henry, his wife, and then the brother's voicemail, correct?
Yes.
The wife is listening, correct?
From what I understand, she gets this call. I don't know what she heard, right? She's so concerned that she calls the brother, and then that is what goes on the voicemail. In my assumption, she would still be on the other end of the line.
I guess that's maybe where you're going with it, Missy, but that's heartbreaking to be listening to your spouse.
It's hard for us, and we didn't know him personally. Yeah, for sure.
And forgive me for my ignorance on this question, but I've never done a voicemail three-way call. If she is doing three-way call, could her voice also be detected, or is she staying muted and quiet while she's hearing her husband scream?
You would think so.
Okay.
Or I don't really know. I've never done a three-way call. But I also am not very technologically advanced. We all know this. Is there a chance that maybe she called and it just went to the brother's phone and then kicked her off? Did you guys hear anything else?
I have listened to it several times today through podcasts, and I hear the screaming. It all sounds like the same voice. I don't hear anything that makes me think somebody else is there.
So when I was listening, the screaming and some of the voices sounded different, but a scream is so much different than the voice that sounds in some places calm during it. And I guess it's hard to know if you don't know what his voice sounds like. You wouldn't know if that's his voice or not, or somebody else's voice, or maybe the brother could have been able to tell that. But I was thinking there was two people, but I couldn't tell if it was only because the difference in a speaking voice and then the screaming.
And he's also intoxicated. So I don't know if that adds any sort of changing of the voice.
That was obviously fear too. How many movies or documentaries or even let out a scream of fear and not even recognize that voice, because that's not something that we are faced with on a regular basis.
Yeah,
So that's something to also take into consideration.
that is a really good point, David. Points for you. So I do have to say now, Corrine later on did say that the voice on this audio recording was her husband's. Now we do hear that other speaking voice. I don't know for sure if she says that is, but the screaming for sure is Henry. And also, you have to remember now, this was just released in snippets for the longest time. And it was like maybe 15 seconds of a little audio clip. So if you just went right now on YouTube and Googled the Henry McCabe audio, you're going to get a little snippet. There is something else about this audio clip. There are people that believe when they listen to it that they hear a voice say, "Stop it." I didn't hear it on this clip, but when I've listened in to other clips, there does sound like it to me. But also, we've talked about this before. If you read something and it says, it sounds like he says, "Stop it," and then you're listening for it, I could see where you would hear that. If people want to go back and obviously re-listen to that audio and see if they hear the "stop it" or see if they hear anything else. Somebody thought he said, "I'm not going in there where no one can see me." I will say the cleaned up audio is a little interesting because with the other one, there's a bit more of a muffled sound, obviously, because it's not cleaned up, but you get, there have been other speculations. Well, so Henry's brother got the phone call, right? He didn't answer his phone. It's left as a voicemail. He wakes up the next day. He checks his voicemail. Here's his brother in this distressed state. And of course, there's something wrong. So the brother is actually the person who reports Henry missing to the police. Cindy, you look like you're deep in thought over there.
How do we know it was a three-way call, and that was it because Henry's phone dialed his wife and not his brother? Is that how we know? Or how do we know he didn't just call his brother?
That was the story that Corrine said. That
Okay.
she had called the brother. Yeah.
May I add to that if I was in that situation and I got a call from my partner that was hysterically screaming, and I was like, I need someone else to be a part of this because I'm out of town, and I call their brother or whatever, you would probably hear me going crazy in the background. She hit mute, so it was all recorded. If I was in that situation, I don't know that you would be able to hear the other person or the scruffles or screams, because I would be so emotional with it. And there's not even a gasp of breath.
And I also am curious, if I got a call from my significant other, granted, if it was in the middle of the night, I would already be panicking. But at what point would my mind go to, I need to get a hold of someone closer to him? There's some amount of time that I'm panicking to figure out what's wrong. How do I help? Who can I get a hold of? All that kind of stuff. I think to your point, David, that makes the silence even more like question. I don't know.
It was,
'Cause, yeah,
I will say, like when I was listening to the calls and doing a little bit of listening research, I was like, oh, that's a silence I don't want to hear, because that was making me go a certain way, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
'cause I would be narrating it or something like, hey, this is what's happening to Henry. Can you do something? I'm in California. And then also going, oh my God, Henry, are you okay? The whole time as well.
We're trying to be quiet to capture everything. There would still be that gasp and that, like, you can control those things, and there was nothing. It was almost like the phone was held up to a recorder of something pre-recorded, like you hear nothing.
I think that she would been trying to continue to get it out of him.
Where are you?
All of that. And I guess, so even if, so say that, because the three-way college, we don't know exactly how that would have worked. So he called her. Is that what happened? Did she call him?
No. What she believes is that it was more like a butt dial.
And so she picked up the phone and then was on it and then decided to get the brother involved. Even if
Yeah.
that's the case and like she got dropped off that call when they called the brother with the three-way call, she didn't hear any of this. Do we know the call logs for the rest of the night? I probably would have still called him back, even if he
Right.
butt dialed me in the middle of the night, because I would think, oh, if my partner called me in the middle of the night when she's out or whatever, I would call back and be like, are you okay? Or like text and be like, hey,
Yeah.
you called me. Is everything okay? Do we know if anything like that happened?
No, I don't know that. I like where you're going with that, though. I was thinking the exact same thing of not only that, let's say somebody that I love called me and they were like distressed and they claimed that they had been shot. That's what she says he said, is that he was shot, that she called the brother. Even if you were dropped from the call, I'd be calling somebody else. Like, I'm calling the cops. I'm like, there's something seriously wrong. First of all, why are we calling brother first? Maybe Henry likes to get drunk and dabble in other things, and maybe she didn't take it as seriously. Maybe she was thinking, oh, go get your brother. He's drunk. He's being ridiculous.
I don't know if you've explicitly said this, but Henry was a person of color, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Knowing what we know now, the track record that the police have in the Twin Cities isn't great. So I'm wondering if that could be a factor that they felt safer going to the brother than immediately to the police.
And in that area in Fridley, there are some more shady areas than others. And the fact that he wanted to go to a specific gas station maybe meant he was meeting somebody that he knew.
I had wrote down in my note, this is a minority, and we know the attention that they get. It would not surprise me if you hear someone that you care for is in distress and you call the closest person to them to help versus the cops, because track shows that you're going to get better luck calling the brother that's an hour away.
The other thing there, too, not only was Henry a minority, he was from Liberia as well. So Henry is reported missing that following morning by his brother. Henry's cell phone had pinged off of a cell tower near View Park in New Brighton, Minnesota, which is 4 miles east of Fridley. So that is the last place that his cell phone pinged. And then after that, his cell phone went dead or was shut off or something. William Kennedy is the last person to have seen Henry. He's the person that dropped him off at the gas station. But he immediately becomes a person of interest. When they go to check their surveillance cameras at the Super America, they don't see this happening at all. Of course, they're like, you're not telling us exactly the truth. But shortly after this, they realized that William was telling them the truth. He actually dropped them off at a Holiday gas station. And guess what? Surveillance cameras were working that day. I know, first. It's the first time in true crime history. All I can say is that they know for sure that was Henry dropped off.
That's good.
But it didn't give us anything else. So we do know that he was dropped off at a Holiday gas station, not to Super America. So 2 o'clock in the morning, he's dropped off at this gas station. And by 2:28 a.m. is the phone call. Pay attention to this timeline because we will come back to that in just a few minutes. The only other thing that I was thinking is that maybe William was too drunk to remember where he dropped him off. It is a possibility that he was maybe trying to throw off the location of where he dropped him off.
Did the surveillance cameras capture him leaving at all?
Not that
They just know that he was there and then suddenly nothing.
Yeah. And I don't even think that they got him going into the store. What it sounds like is they got him getting dropped off, and that was it. We will find out where he ends up, but we don't know where he went from that location. They do search for Henry. They don't have any information. Cell phone is no longer pinging. we do have to talk about this nonprofit group. Now it's called the Minnesota Community Police, and they work as a go-between the Minnesota Police Department and the librarian community, basically just helping them out. They gather up some money and they are offering a $10,000 reward for information about where Henry is or what happened to him, right? Not very much longer after they offer up this reward, they actually take it back. Are you guys ready for this? Because they said Corrine was not being truthful when they had talked to her. So I'm going to give you the direct quote from this nonprofit organization. This is the quote: "She, as in Corrine, is purposely withholding information that we believe could lead to the location and recovery of Henry McCabe." After that, the case goes cold. Okay, so we're going to fast forward to November 2nd, 2005. Henry's been missing since September 7th, and now we're at November 2nd. At 4:30 that evening, police get a phone call from a kayaker, and he had found a body in Rush Lake. Rush Lake is located in New Brighton, Minnesota, and this is about 4 miles from the Holiday gas station. Back to the timeline. He's dropped off at 2 in the morning. Phone call at 2:28 a.m. and his body is found 4 miles from the gas station he is last seen. I don't know about you, but I don't think I can walk 4 miles in 20 minutes. Now, he's been in the lake for a while, so his body is badly decomposed. From what I understand, they had to identify his body using the dental records. A couple things, though, about Henry is, first we'll say, they found a wristband to get into the club. They found $15 in his pocket. They also found his wedding ring in his right pocket. They find his cell phone. And in his left pocket, they find the battery for his cell phone. Besides the fact that he's decomposed, there is nothing else on his body like bruises or scratches or that would say any kind of foul play or any kind of trauma to the body other than the drowning. But at this point, the medical examiner decides to rule Henry McCabe's death as an accidental freshwater drowning. Okay, that being said, that's actually what we have informationally. There are a ton of theories. So do you guys have any questions before we get into that?
I've got some questions. So you said the friends took the wallet and car key.
Yes.
Okay, but when he was found, he did not have his wallet, but he had $15 in cash.
Yeah.
He did not have his car keys. Okay, so who has his wallet?
Calvin still has his wallet.
I think leaving your friend at a gas station with no wallet, also not a great idea.
And also, you took his keys, even if you did drop him off at his house. I'm assuming, and I don't know for sure, his house keys were probably on the key ring, you would think.
And let's pretend that he did drop Henry off at his house. He had a key under the mat and he made it inside, safe and sound. Still, that sounds like a logistical nightmare for the next day because you have to now coordinate with multiple people to get your wallet from this guy, to get your keys from this other guy, go to wherever you parked your car because he had to have driven to the club if they're taking his keys away. They didn't all carpool or Uber.
William was the person driving him to the club. But that being said, why are you taking his key? He wouldn't need to take his keys if he drove him to begin with.
That makes sense. Yeah, because if his car isn't there, is the club like super close where Henry could have walked back easily and gotten his car and driven?
It was like 2 miles. Yeah.
To ride that coattail a little bit, could there have been a discussion of some are ready to go home and he's feeling good, his wife and kids are out of town, and he's, no, let's go to this bar. And they're like, no, dude, we're going home. You need to go home and go to bed. And he's like, all right, fine, take me back home and I'll get in my car and I'll go to this bar. So they're like, no, I'm going to keep your keys because you're going to go to bed and I will see you in the morning. And I'll give you your keys back because tomorrow's the holiday, so nobody has to work. your wife and kids are out of town. You don't need your car. You're going home. You're going to bed. And I'll meet you tomorrow. We'll go to the Waffle House. We'll have breakfast. And I will give you your fucking keys.
That makes a lot of sense.
Thanks, David.
And they were like, if we take him home and drop him out, he's going to get in his car and go to Becky's bar down the street. And who knows what the fuck's going to happen.
But if you're being that protective of him at the bar, but then you still drop him off at the gas.
But it's two different friends. One has a wallet,
No.
one has the keys. And were they friends or acquaintances?
I'm getting acquaintances out of this story.
Because it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I was friends with so-and-so until you're the suspect. I barely knew him.
I also Googled from Fridley to, and they have 2 Holiday Station stores there now. And so they're about 4 or 5 miles. I was trying to figure out how big Rush Lake was because we are 10,000 lakes here, but it's not a very big lake. It looks almost just like a big pond.
Right here, the map is small, but Henry's house is over here. And then this, all the way over here is your false gas station that William had originally claimed he dropped him off at. That Super America is over here. And then down here is where the actual gas station was. So this is where your Holiday is over here. And he is all the way found over here.
It looked like from that map, the nightclub was at the top. And then the first gas station was down on that same road. And then the one he was actually dropped off at was on the same road again, but down further. And you're telling me it's 2:00 in the morning and you're probably drunk? 2 miles, 4 miles,
Yeah.
that's the same distance to me. And I'm also curious on how that conversation went when they realized it's this gas station that I dropped them off at, and they looked at the security footage. Did the police go back to him and say, we didn't find anything? Oh, I meant the Holiday instead. Or what did that conversation look like of, did they go out there and he's, oh, maybe it wasn't this one. Is there like another gas station down the road somewhere?
Yeah.
Because I feel like if he went, okay, fine, it was actually the Holiday, that's different than, oh, crap, I guess it wasn't this one.
We don't really know what that conversation was. Yeah, you're right. Or
Right.
how
To what you said earlier, Missy, about being the annoying drunk friend, things that seem stupid are really important. I have to go to this Holiday because that Holiday makes better coffee than the Holiday that's closer to my house. Or this Holiday has a cleaner bathroom than that Super America. Or,
They have the right ATM machine.
but you said
Because-
there's also not surveillance footage of him leaving ever, whether it's being
Right.
pushed into a car or wandering
Yeah,
away.
that is the last footage of him alive for sure. Okay, should we talk theories then? One of the theories is that whatever happened to Henry after that gas station, maybe he did wander off, maybe he thought he was walking in the right direction. Maybe Henry was attacked by an animal or scared by an animal, thought the animal was chasing him, which made him run in the direction of the lake and then end up in the lake. But there are so many things wrong with this theory. For one, he's got no scratches, no bite marks, nothing on his body, even though we do have to remember he has been in the water for some time. And if there was any kind of evidence, would there still be evidence? I don't know. It depends. But I would think that if you were bitten or attacked by an animal, that's going to show up.
There is around that lake, I don't know if it's a nature preserve, but it is a park. So there might be like deer, but otherwise it's right by a high school.
The lake is in a residential type area, so it's not like a wooded area. You're not out in the middle of nowhere. It's literally residential. He would have had to walk on streets to get to the lake he ends up in. And I can just say this other part now, even though this is going to tie into why I don't feel like some of the other theories are accurate either, but it's not the first lake he walked by. He had to walk by another lake to even get to this lake. When we talk about the animal part, and also why it's ridiculous, is that sometimes people think that the other noises, especially the not cleaned up version of the audio, could be Bigfoot. Bigfoot's thrown around in this case. Do I think it's Bigfoot? Not at all. But if you ever look into this case, that is a theory that comes. I'm going to say no. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to call bullshit on that one for sure.
All right. The second theory is that Henry possibly killed himself. Henry, his friends did say that he didn't suffer with any mental health issues and he wasn't depressed. Right before all of this happened, Henry did get a bad review at work and he had just bounced a rent check. He wasn't doing so well at work and then also money-wise, not doing so well. And we also know that his relationship with Corrine wasn't really in the best standing either. They did have marital problems. What those specifically are, I can't tell you. The theory here is that Henry was drinking and then decided, you know what, I'm just going to do it. But of course, I have a problem with this as well because this isn't the first lake he walks by. There was another lake. And I don't know about how easily accessible the first lake was, but I will show you real quick how here. This is where Henry was found. This is a picture of Rush Lake. And from what I understand, there are some places, obviously there's a kayaker. So there's going to be a place that you can put a boat in, like a kayak in and take it out. But where his body was found was more in this kind of area.
Is that any kind of embankment or is it just straight from the ground to the water? I can't tell if there's a drop off or not.
It looks like it's a few feet maybe, but I don't think it's steep.
There might be a walkway around it, a sidewalk, but for the most part, there's not a whole lot of. I was looking again at the map too. There's 4 lakes total. One was right by the gas station. One was between the gas station and Rush Lake. And then there's still another bigger one on the other side of the highway. So if you're kayaking, why are you kayaking on the small one? I gotta say, there is public beach on the lake in between the gas station and the lake he was found as well. So that's even more reason why, if this was a suicide or something, why he would not have went to the harder lake.
How does everyone feel about that theory?
The only thing that gives that theory is the battery being out of the phone. If he wanted the phone to not be tracked, if that had been his plan. But why not just chuck the phone somewhere or break it?
Okay, so we'll move on. And this theory is a wild theory. It involves the Liberian government. Henry was from Liberia. He was very involved in the political scene over there. And then according to Corrine, about a little bit over a week after he went missing, she tells them that Henry was offered a job with the Liberia government and his goal was to eventually return to Liberia after he got some money, got his master's degree, and was going to go back to Liberia and try to run for president. Also, according to Corrine, his father was involved in politics as well in Liberia and then was murdered by the Liberian government via poisoning. And then that's why they fled Liberia and then came to the United States. The theory is that he's involved in the politics over there and he maybe knew something or was a threat to the Liberian government, who then sent people after him to have him taken care of.
It potentially could be plausible, but why would they wait till 2:00 in the morning and then his friends dropping him off at some random gas station? There would have had to been some other type of plan. And if his wife's not even home, even though she might know where he's going to be, she's in California, she's not going to be able to tell somebody this is where he is if she had anything to do with. But I don't see that would happen the way it did.
They left Liberia because father had been murdered. They've been over here for X amount of time, and then they catch wind that son may move back to country.
Yeah.
They're going to spend all these resources and come over here and stalk out the perfect time to murder him to make it look like something other than murder, when I hate that I'm going to say this, but I feel like it's true that he's a minority. He's a person of color. He is an immigrant. And you're going to wait for the perfect time to murder when you have the resources to do it and leave? Because honestly, is America going to pay too much attention to your murder? I hate that's something that's coming out of my mouth, but I feel like they would be spending more resources on killing this person than what they would need to, because I'm not sure that we're in a country that would really care.
That's
Sad.
It is sad.
But am I wrong?
No.
I think you have a good point. Do we think that the Liberian government came in and sent somebody after Henry because he knew too much or because he was a threat to the current Liberian president? I'll say right now, I don't see it, but
If his wife came home and he was 32 years old and healthy and was just dead in his bed with some kind of unknown heart failure, then I would think with his connections, Liberia came over, broke in his house, gave him a shot, wiped off the fingerprints, and flew back home.
I think the theory, it's very possible that could have happened, but it just
doesn't make sense.
Because you went in and out, right? But there's phone calls, there's all these things. Regardless of where you stand, where the country stands with financial resources, when you are a leader and you feel threatened, you have your people and the resources to go take care of if you want. You're not going to say, make a phone call to your cousins over in the States and have them follow this person around into the fourth lake on the left corner.
No, but there is enough Liberians here in Minnesota that if there were people in the government, they might have relatives here in Minnesota. So they wouldn't have had to fly in and out. They could already have been here.
If you had to fly out, you might not have to fly in.
But I don't know. I feel like if it's the government, they're not stashing him in a lake. They want to make sure he vanishes.
You would think, right?
Or it's very public, so everybody knows about it.
Now, the thought is that maybe the phone call was on purpose as a warning or as to send her a message and say, hey, this is what we're doing to your husband. Keep your mouth shut or something like that, right? Let's move on to the next theory, the smiley face killer theory. Basically, in towns, most of them are more college towns, young men go missing, and not all of them are actually college age. There are some people that go missing that are older, say in their 30s, and they go missing usually around the same time, and that's more like the fall time, and then they show up either in that winter / early springtime in a river or a lake. Some bodies have signs of foul play, some do not. The major theory that you'll hear is that there's a group of people targeting young men that have been at parties or drinking at bars, men that are intoxicated. Some of these men are not super intoxicated, but then are suddenly very intoxicated, which in this case, I do see with Henry, he was fine. And then all of a sudden his friends were like, man, you were really drunk. Like the theory is that these people then abduct whoever and then place them in a lake or a river. Would be there's a smiley face graffiti planted somewhere. Personally, I don't think that it's a group of people, and I don't think that there's always a smiley face at these places. I think it's like one of those red herring type deals where there might have been smiley face graffiti and then people are like, oh, yeah, this is their calling card. And then if it's not there, then obviously they didn't do it. A lot of people don't believe this theory. I am a firm believer in this theory. But when we talk about Henry, we know that Henry was intoxicated. We know that Henry was dropped off at a location and he's by himself, which all of these people that have gone missing are also separated from some group and then later found in lakes or rivers. Now, when we listen to the audio, there are some people that think that it's a possibility that Henry is being waterboarded, which I find quite interesting because in the smiley face killer theory as well, there is another speculation that the people, they're actually being waterboarded or tortured first. So I find that very interesting that some people do feel like they hear that. I do want to point out one more thing with the smiley face killer theory, that they are at this bar party club and they're being roofied or GHB is being put in their drinks, which actually is what fucks with them and why they are separated and so fucked up that they can't quite function right.
This makes me wish that we had more and knew more about the gas station footage, because if it is the smiley face killer, that person would have had to follow Henry from the bar to this gas station a ways away.
Yeah.
So is there a sign that Henry's talking to somebody there? Like you said earlier, pushed into a car. If we had those pieces, we would know so much more. I feel like the police have them. If they confirmed that he was at the gas station by the surveillance video, they had to track him either walking just off camera or walking in the back or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Would you really do that, or would you just find somebody else that's a little bit more accessible? I would probably say that would make some more sense.
But if that person picked Henry that night and then saw there's not really many people at the gas station, Henry seems really drunk now, like the roofies kicked in, they could have taken that opportunity.
Could Henry have been roofied, followed, chased, or abducted or something, right?
I don't know. Because there was at least 2 people that they were at the bar with their friends and ended up in the river somehow in Minnesota here. If you believe that there's one smiley face killer, he's worked in Minnesota. I feel like there's something up with all of these kids that end up in the river. So I don't think it's a group of people. And I don't believe it's related to any of the smiley face graffiti. I feel like there's something going on with that at that time too. But I'm not sure if this case I would think fit into it. The other cases, at least that happened in Minnesota, the kids were near campus. They weren't driven anywhere. The river was right there. The lake was right there. This doesn't fit into the smiley face killer speculation.
We'll move on to another theory, which would be that maybe Corrine had hired somebody to kill her husband. Corrine was out of town, so we know that Corrine was in California at the time. So she does have an alibi for all of this. But there are some things I have not told you about Corrine and Henry, and especially their relationship. Now, like I said, they were having marital problems. What I do know is that Corrine did know that he was not faithful. The other thing is that Corrine did not trust Henry very much, and she'd actually put a tracker on his phone until maybe a few weeks before Henry went missing. And then he found out that she had this tracker on his. If you remember, there was the reward money that they had put out, and then they had taken the money back. They said, we don't feel like Corrine is being 100% honest with us, and we think that she knows more than she's letting on. So after that, Corrine reached out to another company, and this man who owns the company, his name is Gregory Evans. The name of the company was Hacker for Hire. She reaches out to this Gregory Evans person, and she wants him to locate Henry McCabe's cell phone so that they can find him. Greg realizes that Corrine's stories aren't always the same. Gregory has a big enough issue that he stops working with her, for one, and then he makes a 4-episode pod about why Corrine is lying. He made 4 episodes basically talking about Corrine and the story, and there are 30 hours of recorded audio, not all of it on the podcast. The theory is that maybe Corrine had something to do with it. Maybe she had hired somebody to do something.
I think with how it happened again, being late at the bar, friends driving everywhere, I just feel like that would be a stupid time to do it. So I feel like that would be way too much work for it to be planned.
I don't have a thought one way or another, at this very moment, but just an observation. She had a tracker on his phone.
Mhm.
At the time of this night, she still had the tracker, or
From what I understand, he found out a few weeks before that, and it wasn't on his
Wasn't
phone
there.
anymore. But I also wonder could she have put another one on there that he didn't know about?
That's very possible. And if she did, and she got the phone call where she is saying that he's been shot, wouldn't she be utilizing that tracker to be like, somebody get over there right now because something is happening? And
Mhm.
also, I wonder if he was feeling like she had the tracker back on his phone and he didn't want her to track her that night. The battery being out might make more sense because I'm getting hooked up on that for some reason.
The last theory is that it was completely an accident and that Henry just was drunk, wandered off, and wandered into the lake and drowned. So now that we have all of our theories and information, let's look at what our speculations
I'm
are.
going to start out with a few of my no's. I played around with the thought of, could it be a suicide staged as a murder for insurance purposes? Because most people think that if you commit suicide, then insurance doesn't pay out, and that's not the case. It's like a 3 to 5 year if you've been involved. If you're going to commit suicide and choose to take your own life, that's hard enough to not put your family through that with the phone calls. There's some things I question about the wife, but there's also things that I question about the friends. I don't think it looks good that his friend was like, fine, I'll drop you out at this gas station. But I think men have the mentality of, this doesn't happen to me, I'm invincible. Even if they knew he didn't have his wallet, I think it's suspicious that his friends will be worried enough to take his keys and his wallet, but yet drop him out at a gas station. So, of course, that is a flag. The part that we hit on a lot more is the roofie part. Do I think that someone would roofie somebody at a bar and then follow them all around town with other friends to score? No. But what I do think is that roofies can cause hallucinations in the calls. Only heard one voice. It makes me wonder if he could have been hallucinating, ran, and got caught up in shrubbery and woods, and it pocket dialed, and what we're hearing is the ruffle with the faint screams. And when he was finally able to get himself loose is when he fell into the body of water. I think it was a freak accident. What I do find weird is there's a lot of reports on people saying they heard "stop it" in the audio, and I've been shot, but none of that audio can be found now. And even the audio that you played us, I didn't hear that. And in a lot of the news articles, the newscaster comes in and says, and then there was this "stop it," but we don't hear it. So I know this may sound a little silly, but it's the whole Mandela effect of so many people have said they've heard this, and now all of a sudden that's not there anymore, but people are still saying they heard it. What I do struggle with that is, why is his phone in one pocket and his battery in another? That seems very planted to me.
So, I have to ask a question first. The lake that he was found at was 4 miles from the gas station he was dropped off at, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think that I wish that we knew more about the gas station footage. Does he just, is he there and we see these dropped off and he just walks off camera and there's nothing strange about that? It's just he walks off camera and we can't track him anymore. So the police wouldn't make too much of that because there's not somebody that's there that they see talking to him, or there's not a car that they see him getting into. It could be as simple as that, but because we don't know that, we don't see him going into the gas station or leaving, we don't hear about that. I feel like that could lead to more answers of what could possibly have happened. There's a reason he wanted to go to that specific gas station that night. It could have been something as simple as, they've got the good hot dogs, or the clean bathroom. That's the one you want to go to. But it is strange if that's the case that William was saying he was very insistent on this particular gas station. I feel like it's possible that he was meeting somebody there, that someone lured him there, he was communicating with somebody. I would have hoped that they would have checked his cell phone records and that would have been discovered and they would have searched into that as a lead, but they closed this out as a drowning pretty quickly after he was found. William, it is strange, I think, like leaving him at the gas station, but I feel like I agree with a lot of the ways like David was talking about that. He might not have been thinking girls probably wouldn't leave their girlfriends at a gas station, but he's a guy saying, oh, he'll be fine. He'll be all right. Especially if they're just acquaintances rather than really good friends. He'd be like, okay, I don't know what to do with him. This is where he wants to go. He says he's going to be fine. I'm going to just leave him here. Not the greatest decision, but I do think they were at a barbecue all day. They went out to a club. They went to a bar. William was probably not sober driving him. He's not in the right mindset to probably be making the best decisions. I don't put too much stock in the fact that he said the wrong gas station first, because Dana was saying earlier, 2 miles versus 4 miles, gas stations are on the same road. I think that's what I chalk that up to. And I think without more, I can't say that William is involved in any way. I think there's possibilities here. One involves a second person and one doesn't necessarily involve a second person. But he either was drawn to the gas station by somebody and foul play resulted from that, or he went to the gas station, was as intoxicated as he was, and became a target for somebody for foul play. I think he would have had to have been killed probably pretty quickly. I don't necessarily think he was probably killed right at the gas station. I could also see, and again, this is where the video would be helpful if we had it, unless he walked us off camera, but you said the lake is near a residential area. What if he was like walking down the road, he's visibly intoxicated, he's stumbling around, a car is driving by, sees him and is, hey man, are you okay? What's going on? And says, do you want to ride? You can get into my car. But say this person is just out of the goodness of their heart saying, come on, I'll give you a ride. Henry's in the car and he either maybe doesn't know how to direct him to his home, or is saying, okay, hold on, I'm in a car with a stranger. I don't want to be in this car anymore. Drop me off here. This is where I live. And it's a residential area. And that's how he ends up at the lake. David's thought it could have been he's walking through the brush and all of that, gets tangled up and potentially fell into the water and ended up drowning because he was so intoxicated. So I think that's a possibility, but I don't think without the help of somebody else, he got from the gas station to that lake 4 miles in the intoxicated state that he is. Either way, somebody knows something of how he ended up at that lake. And they hold a lot of answers.
But this is why I'm missing Jamie so much tonight, because the fact that you said that maybe somebody did see him walking down the street and he was intoxicated, and I didn't put it in to the theories, but there was a theory that a police officer could have possibly stopped him because he was walking intoxicated, and then the sound in the background could have been a taser and he was getting tased, and he maybe accidentally was killed via.
That's very interesting, because also if the call, if it's right, and I know we don't have the audio of this, but his wife said she thought she heard him saying he was being shot in the state that he was in. Could he have mistaken being tased as being shot?
Yeah, I like that theory, because when the body was recovered and everybody was like, oh, he was saying, I've been shot, there was no bullet wounds on his body.
I don't have a great theory. I'm still curious about his friend too. If he was only an acquaintance, so that part makes it a little sketchy for me. But as far as like mixing up which gas station, I agree too. On the same road, they're both red, white, and blue. Like, you're not gonna remember. You're just gonna drop somebody off. If his friends dropped him off, and he wasn't quite sure where he was going, but it was only a 4-mile walk, and he may be somebody that's very accustomed to walking places. And in a drunken state, you might be like, fine, I'll just go. I don't have my car, I'm walking home. Why he would go to have him drop him off at a gas station and not his actual house, I don't know.
His wedding ring was in his pocket. His wife and children were out of town. They were about to move. Could this have been his last bachelor rendezvous where maybe he knew there were sex workers at this gas station, or he had some kind of an agenda. Could that have been what he wanted to be at this gas station?
So me thinking the same thing, like just sliding his wedding ring in his pocket. He's at the club with his friends. So that part I didn't find weird in particular. But I don't know. For the most part, I just think it was some type of accident, whether it was a person that took advantage of him in some way at the gas station, whether that was just trying to mug him or whatever. But would still be strange if they didn't take the wedding ring, the phone, or even the $15. I don't think it was his wife or the Liberian army. I don't think it would be the who we may be thinking of as the smiley face killer, however that's related. And it sounded to me like in the voicemail he was maybe just throwing up. So obviously if he'd been drinking or roofied, or that's what it sounded like to me. Or I know there was a part that just instinctually my stomach dropped. So whatever it was didn't sound good, but who knows? If you're getting sick in the bathroom or behind the gas station, you just never know. Or if there was another person with him, if there was something bad happening to him at that moment, not necessarily murder, but something else could have been happening. And then after that, he decided to walk home or something. There's too much gray to have a good conclusion.
I am going down two routes right now. One of them is with Carolina's idea of a police officer or somebody kindly offering a ride home. I think we've all heard the term Minnesota nice before. So is it completely plausible that somebody's like, oh my gosh, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Let me help this person as they're stumbling down this road. And if it was a police officer, I could definitely see again, maybe them being like, okay, I don't want to be in this situation anymore. He's starting to ask questions that I'm uncomfortable with, and I don't want to be arrested for being intoxicated in public. But the other road that I'm on is more of a hate crime. In Minnesota, there's a lot of different immigrant groups. I know there's a lot of Hmong people, a lot of people from Somalia. So it wouldn't be that crazy that if people had biases against people of color and they see a black man, something like that could happen. Or if he was at the gas station and asked somebody for help and they did have biases and were racist and decided that this was a good opportunity, it's the middle of the night. Sure, I'll help you get home. I think that's the other road that I'm going down because there was that 28-minute gap in time from the phone call. That's a lot of time and no time at the same time. If you're walking or driving or I could almost go with the started walking and then got picked up. I don't know. I think that window could mean a few things. Considering the phone call, that's why I went down maybe like the hate crime road. Could he have wanted to flee, jumped in the water to hide, and because he was so drunk, accidentally drowned? I don't know.
I picked this case because it was interesting to me. People have always, oh, this case is wild because of this audio, but there's not a ton else. All of your theories make sense that it could be any one of those things and also none of them at the same time. Carolina said something that I had not thought of, the whole maybe he had started walking and then got picked up by the stranger and then got dropped off. That makes a ton of sense. Out of the things that we don't really know, there are things that we do know, and I'm going to say those first. What we do know is that Henry McCabe was let down the day that he disappeared / was later found dead. He was let down by these people that he called his friends, or even if they were acquaintances. We know that now because we're true crime people, but also you just don't do that. Even if your acquaintance, person you don't know very well, is really drunk enough that you're going to take their things away to protect them, then why are you then dropping them off somewhere where even if they're insisting? That doesn't sit well with me. So even if William had nothing to do with this, he was probably doing what he thought was right at the time, right? But in hindsight, we're saying, oh, crap, that's not really the best thing to do. That's one. Number two, if Corinne and Henry's relationship was on the rocks and maybe she was like, oh, Henry's out drinking again. Maybe she didn't, maybe the phone call wasn't as concerning to her. Although I would think that you have this person that is your significant other, the father of your children, who's calling you, who's obviously in distress, and you're not seeming as concerned. I do also go more toward David in that there is the possibility that he was going to that gas station on purpose to possibly meet somebody, such as maybe a sex worker, or, and here's where I'm going to change it up just a smidge, maybe if Henry was unfaithful and having an affair, maybe he did have somebody that he would see regularly, but it was a hookup and he was going to that gas station to meet this person there, and maybe he was going to get picked up, but maybe this person was also attached and had, say, a husband or a boyfriend, or and then did something to Henry from there. The ring being off to me says obviously he's trying to present as single. Maybe whoever, if somebody else was involved, it would make sense. If you're taking the phone and the battery out of the phone, you don't want him to be traced. You don't want his body to be found right away. Why you wouldn't just get rid of the phone in the first place, I don't know. But again, so that's purposeful to me. And then also, money was missing. If you're going to rob somebody, you're going to take the wedding ring and the money. If that makes sense. I think possibly he was going to the gas station on purpose to meet somebody. Now, the idea with the GHB or being drugged was a thing, or maybe he did drugs on purpose and he freaked out. I'm going back and forth. I came into this case not really having a theory, and I'm leaving this case having multiple theories. Again, all of them can be. I liked David's. Maybe he was running and then got caught up in this stuff. The only problem I have with that is he didn't have cut. If you're going through underbrush or whatever, you would have cuts and stuff on your body.
But I'm not sure
Anyway.
I can trust that, though. We don't know the way the body was found, and we don't know. I didn't see very much information on the autopsy. They said no bullet hole, but I didn't see anything about, oh, body was perfect because things were decaying and happening.
I have a problem with that too. You're in water for a long time. How do you know if there's any stuff on the body? Not unless it's like super duper obvious, like a gunshot.
I don't think being a minority played into the cause of the death, but I think when the body was found, it was easily written off as drown because I don't think very many people care. And that's where the minority part comes in.
A lot of the time, when somebody is found in a body of water, that is what they say. Oh, accidental. Person was drunk. They drunkenly wandered into the river or the lake. Done. We solved it. But when you look at the people that are found in bodies of water that were missing for months before, some of them do have evidence of foul play or evidence of whatever other than drowning on their bodies when they're found. People had to actually beg or do their own work to get these things looked at. Just because all of those cases were like, oh, somebody is in the river, they must have fell in there. They were drunk. Of course, that's what drunk people do. They just fall into rivers.
I didn't even think about this, but when I went on my whole tangent about why are we not hearing on the three-way call, why are we not hearing the wife being traumatized by the reaction? But if she was calling the brother to prove to him that this drunk asshole is out here acting a fool and this is what I have to answer the phone to, and she doesn't have the fear of you're being hurt, but the fear of you're being careless because you're drunk again. And so she's just sitting back. Do you hear this? Do you hear this?
To add to that too, David, because I was thinking that same thing, is that because when Missy said something about we don't know, maybe he drank all the time. So she's out in California, she gets a drunk call and she's not even dealing with him. Maybe she did the three-way call and then did hang up, because that's also why she wouldn't have reported anything. If she hung up or whatever and didn't listen to it and was just like, he's your problem, you deal with him.
Yeah,
you know,
there was that already that previous conversation of he's drunk, he needs help, and of course he's going to say, no, I'm not drunk, she's being crazy. And then finally she's, okay, here's the proof. I'm going to call your brother. If he answers, fine. If not, I'll leave it on his voicemail. Here's the proof of what I deal with on a regular basis.
As if she wasn't paying attention to it or whatever. Yep.
Guys, I
He
hate
solved
to,
it.
but we have to start all over because I changed my speculation.
And there is, you remember how we had said, now you had that one group, the nonprofit, that said, we don't think she's being completely honest with us, so we're not going to do the reward money. And then we have the Gregory guy who was like, I don't think she's being honest, and I'm going to make an entire podcast all about how she's not honest about this. There's one thing I do want to say about that. Maybe she and maybe William were protecting Henry. Not because they're being nefarious, but because they are trying to protect him and protect his name. They might know more. William, for example, William knows that he was dropping him off at the gas station because maybe there's a sex worker over there. Maybe he knew that and just didn't want to say that. I will say, and I'm pretty sure that I think Carolina said that somebody knows something. I agree with that. I do think that somebody out there knows more than what they're saying on this case. There are a lot more details that we don't know. We're only given this much to work with. And Henry left behind 2 beautiful daughters and a family that really did love him. Unfortunately, that's all we know and all we can really speculate for now on this case. But there is a phone number that if anybody out there does know something, please give the Mounds View Police Department a phone call. It is 651-484-9155, or you can also call the anonymous tip line at 763-717-4061. And until next time, you guys, all we can do is speculate wildly.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show today. We ask you to please subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else that you find your favorite podcasts, just so you don't miss out on any of our episodes. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at SWACPod, SWACPOD, or you can contact us via email for questions, comments, or case ideas. Our email address is swacpod@gmail.com. That's SWACPOD@gmail.com. Thanks so much for speculating wildly with us tonight.